The financial psychology behind celebrity bankruptcies. Why do so many wealthy entertainers face financial collapse? How does someone earn $50 million, $100 million, even $300 million, and still lose control of it? Is it bad luck? Bad managers? Greed? Or is it something deeper? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Financial collapse at the highest levels is rarely about mathematics. It's about psychology. The same mindset that drives someone to chase fame, applause, risk, and extreme success can also drive overspending, overconfidence, denial, and financial blind spots. From musicians to actors, from athletes to influencers, history shows a recurring pattern: extraordinary income, explosive lifestyle growth, unchecked ego, delayed consequences, and then decline. But this isn't a gossip video. This is an analysis. In this documentary, we're breaking down the 5 psychological patterns that repeatedly appear behind celebrity bankruptcies and financial collapses. We'll reference real-world examples. We'll examine behavioral triggers. And most importantly, we'll extract lessons that anyone, regardless of income level, can apply, because the psychology that ruins millions can quietly ruin thousands. Let's begin with pattern number 1.
Pattern number 1, the sudden wealth effect. There is a moment that changes everything. The first major contract, the first platinum record, the first blockbuster film, the first season-ending bonus. One day, the bank account holds a few $1,000s. Weeks later, it holds millions. Psychologists call this sudden wealth syndrome the emotional and behavioral shock that occurs when income increases dramatically in a short period of time. And in the world of entertainment, this shock is almost guaranteed. The psychological shift. For most people, wealth grows gradually. Promotions, raises, small steps upward. But entertainers often experience vertical takeoff. An unknown actor books one franchise film. An athlete signs a $40 million rookie contract. A musician goes viral and headlines world tours within months. The brain doesn't adjust at the same speed as the bank balance. Suddenly, spending feels abstract. Numbers lose emotional meaning. "I can afford it" replaces "is this wise?" When income jumps too quickly, the mind struggles to recalibrate its sense of normal. And what feels like abundance becomes baseline. Lifestyle inflation on overdrive. Here's where the pattern accelerates. A larger home becomes multiple homes. A luxury car becomes a collection. Private jets replace first class. Entourage expand. Success in entertainment is often public, and visible wealth becomes part of the identity. We've seen this pattern in professional sports repeatedly. According to reports surrounding the bankruptcy of boxing champion Mike Tyson in 2003, tens of millions earned in the ring were matched by extraordinary spending on properties, vehicles, and lifestyle. It's not about recklessness alone, it's about psychological normalization. If you earn $30 million in 1 year, $1 million purchase can feel small, even harmless. But spending is rarely linear. It compounds. The illusion of permanence. Another mental trap, believing peak income is permanent. When a singer is topping charts or an athlete is at the height of performance, the future feels secure. But entertainment careers are volatile. Injuries happen. Audiences shift. Trends change. Studios pivot. History offers many examples, including performers like MC Hammer, whose rapid rise in the early 1990s was followed by severe financial strain after record sales declined while expenses remained massive. The income slowed, the lifestyle did not, and that gap becomes dangerous. Identity expansion, sudden wealth doesn't just change spending, it changes identity. Friends change, social circles expand. expectations rise. Saying no becomes harder when everyone around you has adjusted to your new financial reality. Entourages grow dependent. Family expectations increase. Financial pressure becomes social pressure. And social pressure is harder to cut than bills. What viewers can learn, the sudden wealth effect isn't limited to celebrities. It happens when someone sells a business. An employee receives a major bonus. A viral creator experiences explosive monetization. A lottery winner receives a lump sum. The lesson? When income spikes, freeze your lifestyle temporarily. Delay expansion. Create distance between earnings and spending. Because the most dangerous time financially is not when you're struggling, it's when you feel unstoppable. Pattern number 2. The applause addiction when validation drives financial decisions. Fame does something to the brain. It rewires reward systems. Applause becomes currency. Attention becomes oxygen. Visibility becomes identity. And once someone becomes accustomed to constant admiration, silence can feel unbearable. This is where pattern number 2 begins. The neurology of applause public success activates dopamine, the same chemical linked to pleasure, motivation, and reward. Each standing ovation, each headline, each viral moment, it reinforces a psychological loop. Perform, receive admiration. Feel validated, stream. Repeat, admiration. Feel validated, repeat. Over time, validation stops being enjoyable. It becomes necessary. And when that validation is tied to image, luxury, and perceived success, spending can become part of the performance. Wealth as proof of relevance. In entertainment culture, visibility equals power. Large homes, designer wardrobes, private jets, these aren't always about comfort. They're signals. Signals that say, I'm still winning. I'm still important. I still matter. I still matter. When income starts to slow, some entertainers increase spending, not decrease it. Why? Because scaling down feels like public failure. We've seen elements of this dynamic discussed in retrospectives about artists like Marvin Gaye, whose financial pressures mounted despite major commercial success, partly due to lifestyle expectations and obligations tied to fame. The applause had been enormous, the expectations remained enormous, but income fluctuated. The fear of disappearing, one of the most powerful fears in entertainment, isn't poverty. It's irrelevance. When a career cools, the instinct isn't always to conserve. It's to reassert. Bigger tours, flashier launches, riskier investments, high-profile purchases. In some cases, extravagant spending becomes a subconscious strategy to maintain status. Consider how public narratives have explored the pressures surrounding figures like Allen Iverson, whose post-career financial struggles were often framed against the backdrop of an image built during peak fame. The image was massive. Maintaining it was expensive. Entourages and the applause economy, applause addiction doesn't happen alone. Fame attracts orbit, managers, friends, extended family, advisors. Friends, extended family, advisors. When your lifestyle supports many others, scaling down doesn't just affect you. It affects an ecosystem. It affects an ecosystem, and that ecosystem may subtly reinforce continued spending because your expansion sustains them. Validation becomes collective, and collective validation is harder to interrupt. When financial decisions become emotional decisions, here's the core problem. Money decisions start serving emotional needs, not strategic ones. Instead of asking, is this sustainable? The question becomes, how will this look? What will people think? Will this keep me relevant? And emotional spending is rarely rational spending. What viewers can learn, applause addiction isn't limited to celebrities. It shows up when you upgrade your lifestyle to impress peers. You take on debt to maintain image. You avoid downsizing because of pride. You spend to feel validated. The core lesson separates self-worth from net worth. Because when validation drives financial behavior, sustainability becomes secondary. And when sustainability becomes secondary, and when sustainability disappears, collapse is often just delay. Pattern number 3, the overconfidence trap, when success creates financial blind spots. Success is intoxicating when someone dominates music charts, sells out arenas, wins championships. They don't just build wealth, they build belief, belief, belief in their instincts, belief in their judgment, belief that their success in one arena translates to all arenas. And that's where the overconfidence trap begins. The expansion of confidence psychologists call it the halo effect, when excellence in one domain creates the illusion of excellence in others. A brilliant songwriter with brilliant songwriter may assume they're also a sharp investor. A legendary athlete may believe they can outmaneuver seasoned financiers. A top-tier actor may trust their intuition over audited numbers. Success builds pattern recognition. But financial systems are different from creative systems. Stage instinct does not equal market strategy. Yet after years of being right on talent, timing, and performance, the mind quietly assumes, I'll be right about this. 2. The risk escalation cycle overconfidence often leads to bigger, riskier moves. Launching businesses without proper oversight, investing in friends' ventures without due diligence, entering industries they don't fully understand, signing deals based on trust rather than verification. History has documented how even globally successful figures like Nicolas Cage faced severe financial strain after aggressive real estate purchases and ambitious investments outpaced liquidity. The talent was never in question. The financial risk calibration was. And risk feels different when you're used to winning, ignoring professional advice. Another hallmark of overconfidence, dismissing caution. Financial advisors warn, accountants flag irregularities, managers suggest restraint. But when someone has built a career on bold decisions, caution can feel like limitation, especially when previous bold moves paid off. In several high-profile sports cases, including discussions around the financial troubles of Antoine Walker, analysts pointed to unchecked spending and risky investments that went largely unquestioned during peak earning years. When income is high, mistakes are masked until income slows. The illusion of endless comebacks. Another psychological blind spot, believing you can always bounce back. In entertainment, comebacks are common. Artists reinvent. Athletes return. Actors revive careers. This creates a dangerous financial narrative. Even if this fails, I'll make it back. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes markets change permanently. Audiences shift. Age alters opportunity. And the comeback doesn't generate the same numbers. Overconfidence assumes infinite earning potential. Reality imposes limits. The ego barrier, perhaps. The deepest layer of this pattern is ego. Admitting a financial mistake can feel more painful than the loss itself. So instead of course correcting early, some double down. More loans, more leverage, more expansion. What could have been a manageable setback becomes structural collapse, not because of incompetence, but because of unchallenged confidence. What viewers can learn overconfidence isn't reserved for celebrities. It appears when you assume career success guarantees investment success. You skip research because you trust your gut. You ignore expert advice because past risks paid off. You scale faster than your systems can handle. The lesson is simple. Confidence builds wealth. Unchecked confidence destroys it. Success should increase your circle of advisors, not shrink it. Because the higher you rise, the harder blind spots become to see. Pattern number 4, the Entourage Effect. When too many hands control the money, success rarely arrives alone. When fame rises, so does orbit. Managers, agents, publicists, assistants, friends, family members, advisors. What begins as support can quietly become structure. And when that structure grows too large, financial clarity begins to shrink. The expansion of dependence at the peak of success, an entertainer's time becomes extremely valuable. So they delegate, finances are outsourced, contracts are reviewed by teams, bills are handled by staff, investments are pitched by insiders. Delegation is smart, but distance from your own numbers can become dangerous. When multiple people control access to your money, transparency must increase, not decrease. Without oversight, dependency forms, and dependency can blur accountability. When loyalty overrides competence, one of the most documented financial risks in celebrity culture is the hiring of friends or relatives into key financial roles. It feels natural, it feels safe. But financial management requires expertise, not loyalty alone. Over the years, media investigations into the financial difficulties of figures like Dennis Rodman highlighted issues involving unpaid obligations and financial mismanagement tied partly to unstable advisory structures. The challenge isn't generosity, it's governance. When the lines between friendship and fiduciary duty blur, oversight weakens. And weak oversight invites loss. The silent drain effect, large entourages don't just cost money directly, they influence lifestyle indirectly. If 10 people rely on you financially, scaling down becomes complicated. Travel must accommodate everyone, housing must be expansive, security increases, transportation upgrades, expenses multiply quietly. Because they grow gradually, they rarely feel urgent until income contracts. At that point, the structure becomes heavy, and heavy structures collapse faster under pressure. Fraud, mismanagement, and blind trust. There have been numerous high-profile cases across entertainment where trusted advisors mismanaged or mishandled funds. Singer Billy Joel famously pursued legal action in the late 1980s against his former manager and financial advisor, alleging millions in mismanagement. The lesson isn't distrust, it's verification. Trust without transparency is vulnerability, especially when the financial scale is large. The psychological comfort of delegation, here's the subtle danger. Money management can feel boring compared to performing, creating, or competing. So entertainers focus on their craft and assume the machine around them is running properly. But complex financial ecosystems require active participation from the person at the center, because no one protects your wealth with the same urgency you do. What viewers can learn the Entourage Effect isn't just about celebrities. It happens when you rely completely on others to manage your finances. You mix business with personal loyalty. You avoid reviewing statements because someone else handles it. You build obligations that depend entirely on your income remaining high. The lesson: delegate responsibility. Never delegate awareness. You don't need to control every transaction, but you must understand the structure. Because when too many hands touch the money, clarity disappears. And when clarity disappears, risk multiplies. Before we move into the final pattern, pause with me for a second. If you've made it this far, it means you value depth. You're not here for gossip, you're here for understanding. So take 5 seconds right now and hit the like button. It tells YouTube this kind of intelligent, psychology-driven content deserves to be seen. Now share this video with someone who earns well or plans to. Because these patterns don't just affect celebrities, They affect entrepreneurs, creators, athletes, and everyday professionals. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Celebrity Unscreened. This channel breaks down fame, power, money, and human behavior without noise, without hype. And make sure you turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next deep dive. All right, now let's move into the most dangerous stage of financial collapse. Pattern number 5, the denial phase. When warning signs are ignored until it's too late. Financial collapse rarely begins with a headline. It begins with a whisper, a delayed payment, a shrinking royalty check, a quiet warning from an accountant, a loan used to cover another loan, but by the time the public sees bankruptcy filings, the private signals have often been flashing for years. This is the denial phase. The slow fade of income in entertainment. Income is rarely steady. It spikes, then it plateaus, then it declines. But psychologically, it's difficult to accept decline after experiencing explosive growth. When someone has earned $20 million in a single year, a drop to $5 million can feel temporary, even harmless. Expenses, however, are rarely adjusted downward at the same speed. Instead of reducing lifestyle, some increase optimism. It's just a slow season. The next deal will fix it. One more tour. One more film, hope replaces recalibration. Borrowing against the future. One of the most dangerous behaviors in the denial phase is borrowing against expected income. Advances, loans, leveraged assets. The assumption is simple. Future earnings will cover today's expansion. But when projected deals fall through or markets shift, debt remains. Public records have shown how even massively successful artists like 50 Cent entered bankruptcy protection in 2015, not necessarily due to lack of earnings, but due to mounting legal judgments and structured financial obligations that outpaced liquidity. Income existed, but structure failed. Denial delays restructuring, and delay compounds damage. The reputation shield, another layer of denial, comes from public image. When someone is known as wealthy, powerful, and successful, admitting financial strain feels humiliating. So the image is maintained. Luxury appearances continue. High-profile purchases persist. Confidence remains performative, but performance doesn't pay compounding interest. Silence doesn't stop penalties, and pride doesn't restructure debt. Emotional avoidance, money stress triggers anxiety, and anxiety triggers avoidance. Some avoid opening statements. Others avoid difficult conversations with advisors. Some double down on risky ventures, hoping for a breakthrough. The earlier the intervention, the softer the landing, but denial postpones intervention, and postponement transforms solvable problems into structural collapse. The breaking point bankruptcy, in many cases, isn't sudden. It's the final acknowledgement of what has been quietly building. By the time filings become public, assets may already be liquidated, relationships strained, credit exhausted. Denial doesn't cause every collapse, but it accelerates the fall, because reality compounds whether we acknowledge it or not. What viewers can learn: the denial phase affects ordinary people just as easily as celebrities. It appears when you ignore declining income trends, you maintain a lifestyle you can no longer sustain, you delay financial reviews because they are uncomfortable. You assume next month will fix everything. The lesson is powerful. Early discomfort prevents late disaster. Financial awareness is not pessimism. It's protection. Because collapse rarely begins with catastrophe. It begins with ignored signals. The financial psychology behind celebrity bankruptcies: 5 patterns. Not scandals, not gossip, patterns. The sudden wealth effect, applause addiction. The overconfidence trap, the entourage effect, the denial phase. Different industries, different personalities, different income levels, but the same psychological currents. Because financial collapse at the top is rarely about ignorance. It's about emotion, unchecked expansion, unchallenged ego, unexamined risk, unquestioned loyalty, unacknowledged decline. And here's the part that matters most. These patterns don't require fame. They don't require millions. They operate at every income level. The only difference is scale. A celebrity may lose $100 million. An ordinary person may lose $100,000. The psychology is identical. That's why this conversation matters. Not to judge, not to mock, but to understand. Because wealth is not just built with opportunity. It's protected with awareness. If this documentary shifted how you think about money, success, or risk, then it has done its job. And if you value this kind of analytical, psychology-driven breakdown of fame and power, make sure you're subscribed to Celebrity Unscreened. This channel isn't about headlines. It's about the hidden patterns behind them. Until the next deep dive, remember, money amplifies who you already are. And psychology determines whether it multiplies or disappears. I'll see you in the next one.